Hey, fourth graders. So I hope you enjoyed yesterday's lesson. You know, remember, you don't need someone to help you decide which passages are worth pausing, and you don't need someone to say, "Hey, you know, you have to look at this section again." You should know as a reader when something doesn't feel right, or you're questioning something, or something is being repeated, that you need to be a responsible reader and stop and pause and reread that. So, readers, I'm sure you remember when we were reading The Tiger Rising, and there were certain parts of the books that just begged us to pause and then to place special attention to. It seems like, those windows are like deeper meanings, um, which really helps us bring out the heart of the story, the theme of the story. So, do you remember when Willie Mae told Rob that she thought his rash was really the sadness that he has just kept inside him, deep, deep down to maybe where like his rash in his legs was? So, let me recall that um, little part in Tiger Rising. I could sure tell you how to cure that, said Willie Mae, pointing with her cigarette at his legs. I can tell you right now. Don't need to go to no doctor. Huh? Said Rob. He stopped chewing his gum and held his breath. What if Willie Mae healed him and he had to go back to school? Sadness, said Willie Mae, closing her eyes and nodding her head. You keeping all that sadness down low in your legs. You not letting it go up to your heart where it belongs. You got to let that sadness rise on up. That's when we all kind of looked and said, "Oh, rising, rising." All right. So it was that section where we kind of paused and said, what is Willie Mae talking about? His rash is this rash that he's had for so long that dad's been putting cream on is actually curable by letting the sadness rise on up. Well, we learned that it was the sadness that he had to open up that suitcase, talk about his feelings, especially about what happened to mom and what's happening with dad. So anyway, I want you to be that kind of a reader in historical fiction when something is repeated, like, you know, the cupcake that represents it's not the good old days anymore. Everything is sanctioned, everything is rationed. The dark haired girl, they keep mentioning Ellen's dark hair. Is that going to hurt her? Help her? I don't know. We saw what happened in chapter 5 when the soldiers came in. And then another thing that keeps repeating, the star, especially like the Star of David that was on her necklace. They mentioned the necklace. They mentioned that the imprint of the star was in the palm of Anne Marie's hand because she held on to it for so the soldiers don't see it. So this chapter is called "Is the Weather Good for Fishing?" I always think about the title. Is the weather good for fishing? People allowed to fish at that time? Would people fish when it's not good weather? I mean, some of you have fished. Can you fish when it's stormy? Can you fish when it's raining? I don't know. Let's see what this chapter holds. So make sure you have your notebook and a pencil so you can take notes because you will have a quiz afterwards. Is the weather good for fishing? We must think what to do, Papa said. They are suspicious now. To be honest, I thought if they came here at ale, and I hope they wouldn't, they would just glance around, see that we had no place to hide anyone, and would go away. I'm sorry I have dark hair, Ellen murmured. It made them suspicious. Mamma reached over quickly and took Ellen's hand. You have beautiful hair, Ellen, just like your mamma's, she said. Don't ever be sorry for that. Weren't we lucky that Papa thought so quickly and found the pictures? And weren't we lucky that Lise had dark hair when she was a baby? It turned blonde. It turned blonde later on when she was 2 or so. In between, Papa added, she was bald for a while. Ellen and Anne Marie both smiled tentatively. For a moment, their fear was eased. Tonight was the first time Anne Marie realized suddenly that Mama and Papa had spoken of Lise. First time in 3 years. Outside, the sky was beginning to lighten. Mrs. Johansson went to the kitchen and began to make tea. I'll never, I've never been up so early before, Anne Marie said. Ellen and I will probably fall asleep in school today. Papa rubbed his chin for a moment, thinking. I think we must not take the risk of sending you to school today, he said. It is possible that they will look for Jewish children in the schools. Not to go to school? Ellen asked in amazement. My parents have always told me that education is the most important thing. Whatever happens, I must get an education. This will only be a vacation, Ellen. For now, your safety is the most important thing. I'm sure your parents would agree. Inch, Papa called Mama in the kitchen, and she came to the doorway with a teacup in her hand and a questioning look on her face. Yes? We must take the girls to Henrik's. You remember what Peter told us? I think today is the day to go to your brothers. Mrs. Johansson nodded. I think you are right, but I will take them. You must stay here. Stay here and let you go alone? Of course not. I wouldn't send you on a dangerous trip alone. Mama put a hand on Papa's arm. If only I go with the girls, it will be safer. They are unlikely to suspect a woman and her children. But if they are watching us, if they see all of us leave, if they are aware that the apartment is empty, then that you don't go to your office this morning, then they will know. Then it will be dangerous. I am not afraid to go alone. It was very seldom that Mamma disagreed with Papa. Anne Marie watched his face and knew that he was struggling with the decision. Finally, he nodded reluctantly. I will pack some things, Mamma said. What time is it? Papa looked at his watch. Almost 5, he said. Henrik will still be there. He leaves around 5. Why don't you call him? Papa went to the telephone. Ellen looked puzzled. Who is Henrik? Where does he go at 5 in the morning? She asked. Anne Marie laughed. He's my uncle, my mother's brother, and he's a fisherman. They leave very early, all the fishermen, each morning. Their boats go out at sunrise. Oh, Ellen, she went on. Oh, Ellen, she went on, you will love it there. It is where my grandparents live, where Mamma and Uncle Henrik grew up. It is so beautiful right on the water, and you could stand at the edge of the meadow and look across to Sweden. She listened while Papa spoke on the telephone to Uncle Henrik, telling him that Mamma and the children were coming for a visit. Ellen had gone into the bathroom and closed the door. Mamma was still in the kitchen, so only Anne Marie was listening. It was very puzzling. It was a very puzzling conversation. So, Henrik, is the weather good for fishing? Papa asked cheerfully and listened briefly. Then he continued, I'm sending Inch to you today with the children, and she will be bringing you a carton of cigarettes. Yes, just one, he said. After a moment, Emery couldn't hear Uncle Hendrik's words. But there are a lot of cigarettes available in Copenhagen now, if you know where to look, he went on. And so there will be others coming to you as well, I'm sure. I'm going to pause there for a minute. I feel like the word cigarettes is code name for something. And when he says, is the weather good for fishing? I wonder if fishing is not actually fishing. if it's code name for something. So think about the circumstances that are happening. Think about when the Patriots were trying to overcome the British Army. There were a lot of codes and there were a lot of sneaky missions, I should say. So let's see. But it wasn't true. Anne Marie was quite certain it wasn't true. Cigarettes were the thing that Papa missed the way Mama missed coffee. He complained often. He had complained only yesterday there were no cigarettes in the stores. Aha, I told you. The men in his office, he said, making a face, smoked almost anything, sometimes dried weeds rolled in paper, and the smell was terrible. Why was Papa speaking that way, almost as if he were speaking in code? What was Mama really taking to Uncle Henrik? Then she knew it was Ellen. The train ride north along the Danish coast was very beautiful. Again and again, they could see the sea from the windows. Anne Marie had made this trip often to visit her grandparents when they were alive, and later, after they were gone, to see the cheerful, sun-tanned, unmarried uncle whom she loved. But the trip was new to Ellen, who sat with her face pressed to the window, watching the lovely homes along the seaside, the small farms and villages. Look, Anne Marie exclaimed and pointed to the opposite side. It's Klemperenburg and the deer park. Oh, I wish I could stop here just for a little while. Mamma shook her head. Not today, she said. The train did stop at the small Klappenborg station, but none of the passengers got off. Have you ever been there, Ellen? Mamma asked, but Ellen said no. Well, someday you will go. Someday you will walk through the park and you will see hundreds of deer, tame and free. Christy wiggled her to her knees and peered through the window. I don't see any deer, she complained. They are there, I'm sure, Mamma told her. They are hiding in the trees. The train started again. The door at the end of the car opened and two German soldiers appeared. Anne Marie tensed. Not here on the train, too. They were everywhere. Together, the soldiers strolled through the car, glancing at passengers, stopping here and there to ask a question. One of them had something stuck in his teeth. He probed with his tongue and distorted his face. Anne Marie watched with a kind of frightened fascination as the pair approached. One of the soldiers looked down with his bored expression on his face. Where are you going? He asked. Gilelj, Mamma replied calmly. My brother lives there. We are going to visit him. The soldier turned away, and Anne Marie relaxed. Then, without warning, he turned back. Are you visiting your brother for the new year? He asked suddenly. Mamma stared at him with a puzzled look. New year? She asked. It's only October. I wonder why he asked that question. Because whose New Year is it? And guess what? Kirsty exclaimed suddenly in a loud voice, looking at the soldier. Oh no, Kirsty, don't say a word. Anne Marie's heart sank, and she looked at her mother. Mamma's eyes were frightened. Shh, Kirsty, Mamma said. Don't chatter so. But Kirsty paid no attention to Mamma as usual. She looked cheerfully at the soldier, and Anne Marie knew what she was about to say. This is our friend Ellen, and it's her new year. Do you think so? Do you think so? But she didn't. Instead, Kirsty pointed at her feet. I'm going to visit my Uncle Henrik, she chirped, and I'm wearing my brand new shiny black shoes. The soldier chuckled and moved on. Anne Marie gazed through the window again. The trees, the Baltic Sea, and the cloudy October sky passed in a blur as they continued north along the coast. Smell the air? Mamma said when they stepped off the train and made their way to the narrow street. Isn't it lovely and fresh? It always brings back memories for me. The air was breezy and cool and carried the sharp, not unpleasant smell of salt and fish. High against the pale clouds, seagulls soared and cried out as if they were mourning. Mamma looked at her watch. I wonder if Henrik will be back yet, but it doesn't matter. The house is always unlocked. Come on, girls, we'll walk. It isn't far, just a little under 2 miles. Just a little under 2 miles. And it's a nice day. We'll take the path through the woods instead of the road. It's a little longer, but it's so pretty. Didn't you love the castle when we went through Halsinger? Ellen, Christie asked. She had been talking about Kronborg Castle ever since they had seen it, sprawling, massive, and ancient beside the sea from the train. I wish we could have stopped to visit the castle. Kings lived there, and queens. Anne Marie sighed in exasperation with her little sister. They do not, she said. They did in the olden days, but there aren't any kings now. Denmark only has one king anyway. He lives in Copenhagen. But Kirsty had pranced away, skipping along the sidewalk. Kings and queens, she sang happily. Kings and queens. Mamma shrugged and smiled. Let her dream, Anne Marie. I did the same when I was her age. She turned, leading the way along a tiny twisted street, heading toward the outskirts of the village. Things have hardly changed here since I was a girl, she said. My Aunt Git lived here in that house, she pointed, and she's been dead for years. But the same house is the same, but the house is still the same. She always had wonderful flowers in her garden. She peered over the low stone wall and looked at a few flowering bushes as they passed the house. Maybe they still do, but it's the wrong time of year. There are just those few chrysanthemums left. And see over there, she pointed again. My best friend, her name was Helena, lived in that house. Sometimes I used to spend the night with her, but more often she came to my house on weekends. It was more fun to be in the country. My brother Henrik always teased us, though, she continued with a chuckle. He told us ghost stories and scared us half to death. The sidewalk ended, and Mama turned onto a dirt path bordered by trees. When I walked each morning into town for school, she said, my dog followed me this far. At the end of the path, he turned and went back home. I guess he was a country dog and didn't like the town. And do you know what? She went on, smiling. I had named him Trofast, faithful. And it was just the right name for him because what a faithful dog he was. Every afternoon, he was always right here waiting for me to return. He knew the right time somehow. Sometimes, as I came around the bend, even today, I feel as if I might come upon Trofast waiting still with his tail wagging. But the path was empty today. No people, no faithful dogs. Mamma shifted the bag she was carrying from one hand to the other, and they walked on through the woods until the path opened to a meadow dotted with cows. Here the path skirted the edge of the field along a fence, and beyond it she could see the gray sea ruffled by the wind. The breeze moved the high grass. At the end of the pasture, they entered the woods again, and Anne Marie knew they would soon be there. Uncle Henrik's house was in a clearing beyond those woods. Do you mind if I run ahead? She asked suddenly. I want to be the first to see the house. Go on, Mamma told her. Run ahead and tell the house we've come home. Then she put her arm around Ellen's shoulders and added, say that we have brought a friend. So far, so good. They dodged one bullet with the soldier on the train. But most importantly is that Papa, Mama, Uncle Henrik, they were all speaking in codes. And that code was probably to let each other know what they were planning on doing. And Ellen was the cigarette that they were bringing through, and that there were more and more Jewish people who needed to be saved. So, all right, finish up your notes and then you will take your quiz. All right, Thanks for listening.